Well, hello, Caleb. Thank you, everyone, for joining us as well. I'm excited for this version of the podcast. I'm your host, Cody Hall, and this is The Faces, Entrepreneurs Are People. I'm also the founder and CEO of Telehelping, the here-and sponsor of this podcast. So thank you, Telehelp, for allowing me time to speak to great people like Caleb. How are you today, sir?
Good morning, Cody. I'm terrific. Terrific. How are you doing?
It's a nippy day here in Napa. It's a beautiful 40 degrees. It was around 20 or so when I woke up, so it's a little nippy,
We just came through. I'm in the Austin area. We just came through our 2 weeks of winter, and I think we're on the other side of that. So we had freezing temperatures and a little spattering of snow, but it should be the 70s this weekend. So I'm glad that winter is officially over in Texas.
That's so funny in Vegas because I'm often there as well because I kind of are in Vegas in terms of theory most days. That's my home of residence, and we always say that we get 1 week of fall and 1 week of spring, and Vegas is perfect for about 2 weeks of the year where it's getting that transition. You're like, wow, Vegas is great. You can go out midday. It's not too cold. It's not too hot. And then one day it's just freezing, or one day it's hot, depending on which direction you're moving. And so
you never know.
You never know. And I think Austin is very much the same. I was considering moving to Austin before making Vegas my home, but
Austin's a great town.
Yeah, I wanted to, and for a lot of reasons I'm sure we can jump into today. But before I go in talking about me, because unfortunately these people have to hear me talk every episode, I'd like to know who we're talking with here today. Caleb, why don't you take a moment to introduce who you are?
Sure. Yeah. My name is Caleb Stevens. I am a wealth manager and owner of Stevens Wealth Management. Founded that about 4 years ago. Married to my wife of 22 years, my college sweetheart, and together we have 4 children. I was going to say a joke. I have this thing where a comedian says,
"Please,
I have 3 amazing children and another child." But I have four awesome kids, and God's been good to us, man. We come a long way. I've been in the business about 14 years, and it's been a great gig. We help a lot of folks. So.
Well, that's wonderful. I oftentimes, my wife does have responsibilities and jobs, and she manages our restaurants as an absentee general manager. But I always say, I'm like, man, I can't believe I've done so well in the world where, my wife, knows more about things like TikTok than me. Right. I was like, I created a TikTok scroller. Great. Which is not horrible. So you have 4 kids.
We have 4 children. Yeah. Our oldest is 20 and our youngest is 7. So we got a pretty good range there.
That is a nice range.
And I have in our early 20s, and it's 4 and no more.
I was going to ask you when you started, because 20, you're a young looking man. But that's great though. I think it's nice to have that range. I have a former COO of mine. I don't know how she did it. Mom of 5. And she had her last one in her early 40s when she was working for me. And she was
running your operations.
And she was in charge of, I don't know how she did it. And she was on top of everybody. She was a spicy 5 foot tall person too. And so all that energy and a small person. But the funny thing is about it was that she was like, I really enjoy having someone who's 25 and someone who's 2, right? Because, I get to have a relationship with my 25-year-old, and then I get to experience my 2-year-old still. And so it's like, and I miss my 25-year-old when they were 2, and now I get a whole nother 2-year-old. And so I'm sure you're getting a little bit of that spectrum as well.
100%. It's neat to see the kind of the range of how our relationships develops from just completely looking up to you to being more able to have almost peer-to-peer type relationships. Although it's really not quite that way, but we can go to the gym together. We can do things and have good time as guys. Our oldest, we have 1 son. Our oldest is the boy, and so we get to do guy stuff together. So that's good.
That's great. I look forward to that. I was just telling my wife, because I'm quite big into the exercise world. I was just telling my wife how like I can't wait for my son to be, 18 or 20. We can exercise together. I'll be still relatively young, and he'll be old enough, and it'll be a good time.
Absolutely. I've got to stay ahead of him so I can always continue to show him who's boss.
Yeah, you have to maintain the dominance.
Exactly. The alpha has to stay the alpha.
Well, so 4 children, you've been at it for 20 years as a father. How long has Stevens Wealth Management been going? When did you decide to kick that off?
Sure. I was with a large broker dealer, started in 2011. And I had come, it's interesting, I had been in real estate and really still have an affinity for real estate. But I had been a realtor right out of college. And then I read Rich Dad Poor Dad and said, I want to become a real estate investor. And so I started working as a builder and flipping homes and doing that sort of thing. And then the recession of '08 happens and everything in real estate blows up. And so I did a big career pivot in 2010 and started looking at the financial industry. I always had an interest in the markets, always had an interest in investing in the markets, but had zero education in the space. But I found a firm that would not only hire you, but educate you. It put you through all the training.
Valuable.
I didn't have a finance degree. In fact, my backstory is I'm a minister. I'm a preacher by calling. And
okay.
Went to Bible college, met my wife there. And so my financial background was not in the space of wealth management at all. But I found a firm that believed in bringing the right people on board, whether they had the background or not. And I was fortunate enough to get through a really arduous process. And they said, we can, we'll train you. We'll put you to school to get the education you need to do this. And so really was blessed with the right opportunity at the right time, and came up through the ranks. Started out with the door knocking, shaking hands, networking, all the chambers of commerce and Rotary clubs, and just the old fashioned shaking hands and kissing babies, and built a really a beautiful practice in the state of Maine. Actually, that's where I'm from. And then about 4 years ago, ministry reasons, calling purposes, we moved to the Austin area. So it was at that time that I left the broker dealer to launch Stevens Wealth Management.
No, I mean that's a great story. And so, what university did you go to?
So I went to a little school that has actually evolved and the name has changed, but at that time it was called Gateway College of Evangelism in St. Louis. And so it's now called Urshan College, and great little school for ministry, and it's very niche focused in that type of thing. And I knew a number of ministers. In fact, my dad was a preacher who had gone there, and I honestly didn't have any interest in going just because it was his, I didn't want to walk the same exact path that he had and whatever, but I visited and really just felt like this is the place I'm supposed to be. Ended up meeting my wife there, and the rest is history. So, yeah.
Well, that's great. And, I enjoy the jump into finance, and just the perspective of, I'm sure you're able to provide a lot of value for folks as a minister of finance. And so, because a lot of folks, and, I go back to a man I knew in the Carolinas, good mentor of mine, and he was a deacon, and he gave a considerable amount to the church all the time. It was something that he had financially planned for. It was a part of his budget. And so I'm sure that is a piece of what you offer as well, those who are committed to their tithings and are able to plan for that.
Cody, I try to teach that. We manage people's financial affairs. We plan for them, we do their investing, but I try to teach and express on folks the power of this principle. that giving is a principle that works. You know, the Bible teaches that those that are generous, it's not like it's when you pour out that you're depleting a resource. When you pour out into other people, you're making space for more to be poured into you. And the generous soul shall be made fat is kind of the way or the liberal soul shall be made fat is the old King James version, which basically means as you are generous to others, there's going to be abundance and more than you need flowing back into you. And it's a powerful principle. So I teach that. I believe that very strongly and live it. And that's Robert Kiyosaki teaches a principle, Rich Dad Poor Dad. I mentioned that book, and years ago I learned that his concept was the wealthy pay themselves first, and so rather than paying all the bills first, and then whatever's left over, that's what we save and invest. He teaches the wealthy, or those that become wealthy, learn to save and invest, pay themselves first, and then pay the bills. And if there's not enough to pay the bills, they'll go create some more revenue to make sure the bills get paid. He said, but if it's the other way, if it's the reverse, if you pay the bills first and there's not much left over to save and invest, well, there's no pressure for that. But if it's the light bill or the mortgage payment or the rent, there's a lot of pressure to pay that. So if you pay yourself first, and then now we've got to make sure we pay the rent, you're going to make sure you go and create some more revenue. But if you pay that first and then it's the other way around and we don't have enough for saving, there's no pressure. And so it's easy to say, okay, I won't pay, I won't invest this month, or I won't save this month. But if you pay yourself first, it creates pressure. And so I love that principle, although I take it a step further and say, we pay God first, then ourselves, and then the other pieces. So that's kind of just the philosophy that I ascribe to, and I think it works really well.
I love that. And, I grew up Presbyterian, and so I grew up in the Southeast and the Carolinas, and I wasn't always a giver. I grew up quite poor, and so always the thought process is I had nothing to give.
Yeah, sure.
So I always say, what do you mean give you something? I don't have anything. I don't really think I'm the one to hand out things. In spite of my grandmother raising us and always giving us $1 for the offering plate every Sunday. And but I had an epiphany once, and I was after I'd hit a large milestone of earnings in my life, and I sit there and I was writing. What was I doing? I think I was writing down the tip for a dinner I was having with my wife. And I am historically a bad tipper. It's not something I'm ashamed of. I grew up in the service industry. I own restaurants. I understand that it is something that's not guaranteed. It is something given. However, when I do give a tip now, I realize that day, I'm like, why am I not tipping more? I was like, what is $20 to me? And I said, it's insignificant. And I'm like, why am I not giving this person who is here on a holiday, a tip, who was very kind to us? And so I started tipping more. And then, I got to a point in my life where I started actually giving the equivalent of my first year's salary as a Marine. And so that's like my benchmark now. And so I donate my E1 pay, my enlisted one as a private's pay every year to military charities. And I've been, thinking about increasing it this year. Maybe I'll go to the enlisted level 2, just because, for me, I remember, and I picked that odd amount because I remember, to me, how important it was to get paid every week. Like when I was getting paid in the military, I'm like, I need to pay my phone bill. I have a motorcycle payment that I need to pay. And I just remember what it was like needing that. And so I give it back to military charities now. And, it would be great to have it. But, like you said, like I feel like I'm making room and I'm giving, goodness back to me somewhere in the universe. Like it's coming back to me somehow, some way.
Thank you for your service, first of all. But I love that. I love that that principle. And I think most of us have a very unhealthy relationship with money. There's a lot of folks that have that
I
same,
agree.
me included, coming from not a lot. I didn't come from money. Didn't have. I wasn't learning about trusts and all these different things as a kid. That wasn't a part of our life at
Yeah.
all. My dad was a minister with 6 children, so I have 4, and that's easy compared to what he did. As the sole provider of the family, my mom was a stay-at-home mom, so the money was always tight. He always provided a roof for us. We had food on the table, but it was,
Mhm.
there wasn't extra. At the same time, so coming from that, I get it. I get that we have this. So often there's a mentality that money is a finite or limited resource, but that is not the truth. There is abundance all around us. There is more money than any of us could ever spend. We just have to understand how to tap into it, how to find and access it. And so I think giving, when it speaks to our relationship with money oftentimes, and what we put our trust in. If my trust is in my money and I have to have it, and if I don't have it, I've lost control, and I feel like I'm going to despair, and life is going to be a wreck, then maybe I'm not going to give. But if I understand that I've been given a gift, my life, my energy, my ingenuity, my creativity, my ability to work and innovate, and opportunity is coming to me, and it's all been given to me as a gift. And if I can see myself as a conduit, where if the more that can flow through me, the more can be given to me. And I think that sort of thing is, it has helped me have a paradigm shift when it comes to that sort of thing. So I hope it will for others as well.
No, one thing that I've had 2 instances recently, one just yesterday, I had a family member of mine reach out to me needing money, going through a divorce. And the first thing that came to mind was when they messaged me was how incredibly hard I'm sure it was for them to contact me asking me for money.
Yeah.
Because they're very prideful, right? Rightfully so, right? Where I reach out to a younger member of the family in any regards needing money. And, my first thought process was like, okay, like what's going on? How's that? Let's get to the bottom of how are you kind of things. So I chatted with them, and this person historically is not one to take advice. And I said, well, hey, if I'm going to give you money, I want at least a minute for every $100 I give you. And so I was like, and I just want you to kind of hear my piece. And I'm not going to lecture you, but I want you to understand my perspective and my opinion. And, and I said, hey, here's the money, take it. He said, oh, I'll pay you back next week. I said, take the money. I'm like, if you want to pay me back, pay me back, right? If you don't want to pay me back, or you can't pay me back, I don't want you stressing over paying me back, because I don't want you to I can't call Cody. Right. I can't talk to Cody because I owe him money. I don't want that relationship. And so, this is one of those things that historically I've always thought on my end, and because I come as like yourself from a background where my family's not someone who I can get money from if I need. I go broke, right? If I go down to zero, it's me. I have to lean in. Me and my family, my wife, we'd have to lean in on each other because I can't go out to others for money. There is no money. And so in that respect, I quote Denzel Washington once. I mean, he said, "Need is need," right? And I think that for those who have much, you can do whatever you want with your money. I don't care. It's your money. I'm a capitalist to the core, right? You want to burn it to stay warm, burn it to stay warm. All right. However, I think that outside from this world, one of the greatest things we can do is help someone with zero intentions of some type of repayment. And that's what, there's no other better payment in this world than to assist and not want anything.
So good. So good. Dave Ramsey talks about that. He's like, if you're borrowing money from somebody in your family, that really changes the dynamics of Thanksgiving dinner, you know? But if there's somebody in your family and you have the ability to help, and you can give it with no strings attached, like you just described, and say, if you want to give it back, that's fine. But if you can't, that's okay too.
Correct.
That takes the pressure off. And I think it helps the relationship stay healthy, you know? And I think that, it's so good. It's fantastic stuff.
But you know, it goes back to business practices as well. Because, you know, I always say there's only one way to do business, but everyone does it differently. But the only way to do it is to make revenue, right? At the end of the day, Stephen Wealth Management needs to make money. Right? There's a family that needs Caleb to make money, right? As with my family needs telehelping to make enough, not only just to profit, to break even, but to compensate me so that I can take care of my family, right? And you know, we have a large pool of clients now, and there are occasions where our clients hit financial times, who they hit cash flow issues, right? And they also, it's difficult because here I'm having cash flow issues because maybe they are having folks that are, you know, a bubbling accounts receivable, because it happens. Maybe their clients are hitting tough times. You know, the chain of things, money flows. And so maybe their clients are hitting hard times, and then they're not getting paid, which means they can't pay you. And I had a client recently who was about 3 months behind, and just like that is a lot for us. Like 3 months behind, you know, we will historically cancel services at 15 days past due, and then seek to collect. But you know, this person being a veteran, a Marine himself, and I was sitting there, I was like, he was telling me what's going on, and he's like, had all this going out there. I'm like, you know, I trust in you, right? You know, I will give you the time you need. I'm like, I can't go over X amount of days, right? We hit 90 days, and I'm really going to be having to start to count my losses here. But I'm going to put faith in you that you're going to prioritize, because I'm giving you people who allow you to run your business, right? A marketing firm. And so I believe without those people, you can't run your business, and I'll never get paid. And so I was like, I put faith in it. And, you know, he came through just last week, and he was the last person so I could close out 2024's books. And so he came through and he paid his outstanding balances. And I was like, part of me didn't expect it, but I was like pleasantly pleased that that goodness came back, because I was like, oh, you know, I didn't want to lose that money, but also at the same time, like I wanted more for them not to fail. Man who just had a second child, their company is the company that supports his family. I didn't want that to fail, right? Getting paid was great.
But the fact that this client, the faith that you put in them was made good on, that probably felt good too.
Of course. Well, you know, and I'm sure, like you, in a different sense, but in a similar sense, you are helping people accomplish a goal of a vision of their life, right? They have a goal in mind, whether it's retirement, early, late, a nest egg, college funds, something is there taking place for you. And you're like, listen, ex-client, we're going to get you to this path. And it's very similar for us. You know, people come to us, putting faith in us, putting money in us to support their business, which oftentimes supports their family. And so I always count things. You know, we always like to talk about revenue. Revenue is great. Profit margins are great. However, I always like to talk about the number of people that we support. You know, we look at like telehelping, right? And then we look at, you know, 80% of our businesses are one-person businesses, and so then families and kids and wives, like this bubble of people who have an essence of reliance on us, is what I carry every day as like my accomplishment. Like, oh, we are supporting so many people, and in return, we're able to, like, we have our own little GDP that comes from telehelping, because we're in it for small businesses. Sure. And so that it's an incredible feeling to count things like that when you don't have to worry about the paying bills.
Absolutely. So tell me more about telehealth. I'm intrigued.
Well, I started it by accident. Really, I didn't even start it as a company to be a company. I was running a healthcare company. I needed nurses
Okay.
that spoke Spanish. And I thought it was asinine that I was paying Philippine-based nurses to speak a second language. And I was like, why am I paying a premium in the Philippines for somebody 16 hours behind me to speak Spanish? It just didn't add up in my head. And I looked at my wife and she's like, we can do this in Mexico for cheaper. And I looked into the regulations, everything, very similar nursing practices. And so we started a company. And for the first 2 years of its existence, it was nothing. It was just like, I was billing the organization at cost to provide nurses so that I could run my bigger startup, which was, at this point in time, multi millions. And so I didn't really care what was going on at telehelping. But when I sold out of telehelping, I retained the organization, retained the contract, and decided to start building it. And I realized that there was just so much parallel elements of culture and values in Mexico, and then the elements of like the top 1 to 3% of Mexico, they're learning English from the time they go to grade school. And so, and it just snowballed from there. And then we thought we were going to be a healthcare company in all essence. And then, we ended up finding that, accounting, financing, CFAs, and lawyers were a majority of our mix, because the one thing that a lot of those three pieces have is there are a lot of individual practices, and individual practices find themselves in oftentimes restraint because there's only so much Caleb can do. And for Caleb to, right, only so much time a day. And Caleb is like, well, does Caleb spend his time getting more clients, managing existing clients, communicating with existing clients? And so, that's where we find our niche. And we've been fortunate. We've had our tough times. There was at one point in time where we went down all the way to one client. And because we were going through a transition, and it saw its way back through. And it's just one of those moments where I'm sure you have a similar experience where you're sitting there as a financial.
Yeah, it can be a rocky time.
How was that you're talking about your transition? You left an established firm, right? Which established to me means you are, in essence, and there's nothing guaranteed, but as guaranteed as it's going to get, right, in terms of making money, to not guaranteeing anything. And so, how was that for you and your family?
Massive leap of faith, man. It was. It's one of the scariest things, and this is so relative because for a Marine who's if you've ever been in combat or something like that, this doesn't seem scary because there's nothing physically scary about it. But at the same time, when I typed that resignation letter. And I'm sitting there ready to hit send on that email, knowing that my entire livelihood could be gone. And I have 4 kids at home and a wife that's relying on me to provide for them. That was nerve-wracking. Anyway, made the leap, was able to retain a good portion of my clients. Basically, what had happened was that I was with a firm that wasn't going to allow me to transition my practice from Maine to Austin. And so they somewhat forced my hand. They said, you're going to only be able to retain the clients that are, close friends and family. Well, I suppose I could have said they're all close friends now, that they're clients of mine. But in reality, they really didn't want me to take my book of business with me to Austin. And there was really nothing to step into. I would have been starting from scratch here, and I built this business from scratch the first time, and these were my clients that I had gone and with my blood, sweat, and tears had created these relationships. And I hoped that they felt the same way, that they were more loyal to me than the firm. And so when I made that launch, I was pleasantly surprised. It's always interesting because you never know who's going to, feel that loyalty and who won't. And sometimes it's people you are 100% sure they're going to go with you that decide that they want to stay for whatever reason. And when you leave, sometimes you get thrown under the bus. You get things are said that, oh, they left in the night, and I don't know what kind of shady thing they're doing, but you don't want to, you don't want to take your money where he's going. So that sort of thing can happen. But it was the right thing to do, and it has been good. A long, challenging process. I never want to have to do it again. So, but it's worth it, and in the long term, the clients that made the leap with it, they are been very happy with the transition. So it's good.
Well, Caleb, I know that despite all my tumultuous experiences in the military, there is nothing that I fear more than not being able to provide for my family. And as an entrepreneur who has a family like yourself, talk about the pressure, the weight that we carry every day, because when we say it's all on us, it's all on us. And we are oftentimes the head decision maker. And so really it boils down to everything we do on a daily basis as to, does my family have what they need?
Yeah.
And I think that's something that leads oftentimes to me doing things that Cody really doesn't want to do. I bite my tongue with clients sometimes. I do jobs that otherwise I don't want to do, right? Because I understand that I have people who count on me. As my older brother would say, I have mouths to feed.
Yeah.
And while I'm quite far away from having to, consider the fact that I just need to afford to feed my children, thankfully, it's still ever present because I have a good friend of mine, interesting course of life. In his 50 years, he's gone from ultra rich to ultra poor to ultra rich, lost everything in '08, right? Brought it all back, had a divorce, brought it all back. And so, he's probably bought and sold multiple yachts a couple times over. And he's just one of those guys who've always reminded me, I think he's a little bit more risk on than I am. I definitely am kind of a reserve person, right? I do my risky stuff, but he's probably just into the wind all the time. But he reminded me constantly that it's not guaranteed. Nothing's guaranteed. How many businesses shuttered their doors in 2020 when COVID dropped, and never thought that would have happened. Restaurants that were shuffling millions of dollars through the doors every year cease to exist. And
yeah.
It's one of those things that's hard to plan for, but I think that kudos to you, because you said that when you're making that transition, things were said about you, and people acted certain ways that you probably wouldn't have expected them to act. And I have that happen with clients all the time. I have a client just recently that I knew from the military, who got out, started his own practice as a lawyer, and then solicited and poached our staff from us. And so, which is, kind of shocking considering I thought we had some sort of higher degree of, fortitude, respect towards each other. I didn't think that a Marine would be the one who I'd have to find myself in a lawsuit with because they wanted to cut us out for it. And I'm telling you, Caleb, what cutting us out for our profit margins, like $200-$300 a person, you're gonna just kick me to the wayside for $300 a month? Like, wow. I'm shocked. And and I sit there, I'm like, well, it makes you wonder if you know people.
True. It's true. In this business, there's you can always focus on that stuff. Things like that will happen, but I'm really a believer in that if you do the right thing, it comes back to you. And
I agree.
That principle of you reap what you sow. And so, while that sort of thing will happen, there's more than enough to go around. And
right.
So you continue to do what's right. You continue to help your clients and establish that high level of respect and rapport, and good things continue to come. The referrals flow in. We're helping people at a high level. We have, hundreds of millions of dollars that we've managed and have come through our offices, and that thing, that itself is a big deal. When people are willing to put their life savings, and that goes back to, when some people decided to stay, I can understand it to some extent, because that's their life savings. And there's fear in moving. There's fear in taking something that I know it's established. I trust where it is and what's happening with it, but then to move it, it's a scary thing. And so whenever someone chooses to do business with us and move their entire nest egg and allow us to manage it and put that trust in us, that's a big responsibility, and it's a massive honor. And so when we have that, been given that privilege, I teach my clients that my number one goal with your hard-earned money is to protect it, to protect this hard-earned asset, because and everybody's risk tolerance is different. Everybody's comfort with fluctuation of the markets and different things like that. But when it comes to our life savings, when it comes to the assurity that if I'm gone, my wife and kids are going to be okay, when the assurity that if I can no longer work and tomorrow I can't do this anymore, are we going to be good? Is what I've saved and what I have invested going to be at risk, or is it going to be in a place where I can count on it? So that sort of thing is kind of where we start, and then we build in the growth around that, and that's kind of the way it works. So, yeah.
And Kip, I think that's a beautiful way to transition, because I want to know, who do you work with? I've been fortunate enough to have folks on this podcast that I had a CFA who works just with oil company executives and owners. Like, what an incredibly niche market for West Texas, right? And so, talk to me about who you work with specifically.
Sure.
Who's that client avatar?
That our client typically is in the 50 to 70 range. Okay. Oftentimes professionals. I have a lot of attorneys. We have a lot of physicians that are clients of ours. We also work with a lot of business owners that have made a great amount of money, are really good at what they do. So the professionals, the ideal client that I work with, are people that are great at earning an income, are laser focused on that and their life, and don't want to be an expert at investing. And even if they were or could be, which they're all intelligent enough to be if they chose to, they don't have the time or the bandwidth to focus on it. So right. We come in as their financial quarterback, and we carry this position for them, that they don't have to think about it, and we just deliver. And so we take the investment management off their plate. They don't have to be picking the individual investments. We are a fiduciary, which means we are bound by law to do what's in our client's best interest. But I ascribe to a higher law, which is do unto others as you would have them do unto you. That golden rule of doing what's right because it's right to do. And so anyway, but the fiduciary responsibility of making sure that that trust is there, knowing that is part of the deal. People can just give it to us and allow us to manage it and not have to worry about it. They can sleep better at night because it's taken care of. And so entrepreneurs, we have a lot of business owners that might be coming up on an exit or building up to that at some point. And so yeah.
That's great, Kevin. So it sounds like you work with similar clientele as me, and you mentioned here, you're working with people who are experts in their own right. Like they're intelligent, and I think that's one thing that I always see all the time is people come to us who are intelligent. They're great lawyers or accountants and CFAs, and they're like, but I don't market. right? Like like I don't market, right? Who wants to spend all day making content and messaging people? You know, and it's because I didn't become an accountant to message people, or a lawyer to message people, or to have email communications all day with people. I came here to practice law or practice medicine, and so I think that's a brilliant way, because you're right. I have a buddy of mine who's a physician, you know, a doctorate in informatics and emergency medicine. He is a day trader because he has left the medicine world. Amazing dog, amazing trader. However, you know, while there's such a small group of those folks, you know, like you said, they're great earners. Like, you know, they get those billable hours. They're getting those doctor paychecks, and it needs to go somewhere. And I think that's a great place. I think that's a great place to be in.
It's interesting, Cody. I've worked with people that have incredible incomes, and you know what? It doesn't matter how much you make. What matters is how much you keep. And it's crazy. I've had some attorneys that are $1 million a year producers. They're crushing it in life. They're living this affluent lifestyle. They've got the boats. They're part of the yacht club. They're all these, you know, their life expenses are at the level of their income. And there's nothing to show for it. And we have to help them rein that in and say, if you really want to be able to maintain this lifestyle, we've got to build in a system that can create that income in the future passively that will allow this to continue. Otherwise, it's going to be a rude awakening someday if we don't figure out a way to pay yourself first and put that money to work. And so that's it's always interesting, because you can have somebody that's making 10% of that kind of an income and be way ahead of that other person, just because they have the discipline and built in the, you know, and that's the beauty. If you can set up systems that make it so you don't have to be disciplined, right?
Correct.
Like if you set it up so that the money's going in no matter what. I don't have to stop and physically write the check each month, but ACH is bank depositing. Boom, my investment's going to happen. You can set certain things into place that allow it so that it takes the need to be disciplined off the table, because you set it up right. So that's what we hope people do.
You know, that's a great way to look at it. I think we always think, you know, the mind says, how much do you make per month? It's a great mentality. How much do I make per month? How much do you make per month? And I look at it more like a ratio. Is how much is my cost of living, my monthly spend, compared to my revenue? Because I look at every month as a profit margin. You know, what did I make this month? And because I just was raised the way I was raised and brought up with the scarcity of money. You know, I invest quite a bit. You know, I day trade every day, but you know, I'm happy to say that I only spend about 20% of what I make every month, like, to operate my entire life. And it's
good for you.
And it's crazy to be in that position, because sometimes I forget about some of my things that pay me every month. And because you just, and that's what you're helping people do. You're like, let's build this line. We need to get some money coming from here every month. Money coming from here. Because I always say, if you only have one source of income, I go back to the Mariner's rule, which is the Marine Corps saying, you know, 3 is 2, 2 is 1, 1 is none. And so I've always been like, all right, well, I got this established. Let's move on to the next one. And I got money coming from this. Let's move on to the next one. And that's great that you help folks do that, because I see doctors coming. I think at our peak, I had about 30 doctors that worked at my healthcare company. And then a ton of MPs and PAs. But I saw doctors who made more than I did. And I was sitting here, I'm like, wow, I founded the company, CEO, and you're making more than I do. It's crazy. And they spent every penny. And because and it's difficult, because when you work the hours a doctor works, it's hard to put in thought process as to what you're going to plan for tomorrow, right?
Planning. It takes a lot of time and effort and thought. And so you're absolutely right that there's a scarcity of time for them.
Yeah. No. Yeah, that's great. And before I jump into, how people contact you and, how I get connected to you, I always like to ask, especially people with your particular background, being so well-rounded, right? You would be someone that I would find as I'd come to advice. I'm like, Caleb, I need some advice. You'd be the person I think I could get some advice from because you have a well-rounded perspective on life, both financially, family, and spiritually. What is that advice that you get? If you had that one piece of advice that you're able to give any one person, and I always find this a tough question because like there's so much you could tell a person.
Sure.
What's that one piece of advice that you like giving people?
Always be learning. Knowledge is power. But knowledge is only power if applied. And there are a lot of people that understand basic investment or finance principles, but it's a lot easier to say, a lot easier to know than to do. So always be learning, but knowledge is only as good as the application because we live in an age where knowledge and information is abundant in every field. Anything you want to learn, you can learn. So knowledge and information is not the issue. If information was all we needed, everybody would be billionaires with six packs, right? But we know how to get those things. If we just were disciplined enough to do the work, we could all look like that or all have that. And so I think for me, if I were giving advice, is to surround yourself with people that are trying to reach the similar types of goals that you are, or have reached them, that inspire you, that are constantly learning, that are constantly pushing themselves to grow. So learning, what I mean by always be learning, always have, to me, it means having a growth mindset, a mindset of, I want to continue to progress in my life in these multiple areas, because I think, like you said, having a well-rounded background is important, and having a well-rounded life is important. So I want to be healthy in my marriage. If my business is thriving and my marriage is falling apart, my life is broken. If my marriage is good and my health is falling apart, my finances are good and my marriage is good, but I'm not taking care of myself and my health is a wreck and I can't sleep at night, and I'm taking drugs to keep myself going, that's not good. So, but if I can, if my health is good and my finances and my marriage is good, but spiritually I'm a wreck, and I don't have the right connections, and I'm not at peace because I'm living in this dissonance with my values, and I'm not living the way that I say that I want to live and I know I should live, and I'm unhealthy, I'm broken, things are not right in my life. And in each of those cases, I think I would say if we can focus on, I don't think it's people talk about balance, right? There's a lot of this people talk about having a well-balanced life, or having I need balance in my life and all that. And I think that isn't always going to be able to be done. I think if you're a hard charger and driving and trying to grow a business, there's going to be some things that are out of balance. But all of those things have to have their place where they can be filled and recharged. And if not, you're going to find some emptiness and brokenness in your life. And that, so my thought would be, always be growing, have a growth mindset, but at the same time, all of these things are we're here for a moment. Nothing is, you mentioned it, nothing is guaranteed. And I would say make sure that things are right with your soul. Things are right between you and your maker. It's a really big deal, and a lot of people neglect it, and just from ignorance or a lack of understanding of it. And it goes back to the same way with finances, man. People neglect their finances because they don't understand it. They don't know what they don't know. And I've been there. I understand. I know what that's like. We are afraid of things that we don't understand. But if we have a growth mentality and a always learning, always be learning, and abundance is there, God is there. He's ready to meet us if we're ready and hungry to reach for him. So anyway, I'll wrap it up with that.
No, Caleb, I think that was a beautiful monologue there in regards to the question of advice. And I will reference, a lot about what you said, and I'll add on to the top is one of my instructors, a former SEAL team, 6 guy, this Dev grew highest level of the special operations world. And he says, the one thing that we do better than everyone else is execute. And, if I see anything in this world, it's all in what we do and what we've learned and how we apply it.
Mm-hmm.
But you can have all the knowledge in the world and not put it to work, like you said, and then you just have a lot of information, right? And so, wonderful way of phrasing all that, and I thank you. And Caleb, I want to take a moment to just, how would someone get in contact with you? We talked about who your clients are, what you do, your approach. Talk to folks how to get in contact with you.
Yeah, you can reach out to me on LinkedIn. Caleb Stevens on LinkedIn, simple way to find me. If you're not on LinkedIn, you can reach me on Instagram, Caleb Stevens 1 on Instagram. You can email me, caleb.stevens, so that's CALEB .STEPHENS @GLIC.com. Those are the best ways to reach me.
Wonderful. And also to note too, Caleb, one thing that we're starting here soon is we're starting to backlink our videos on YouTube to our clients, our guests, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that you can, when you watch the video, like, I like that guy, I want to connect with him. So having you pop up at the end so that people can click on you is something that we're working on. I think you may be one of the first ones that gets that applied to. So, but if for some reason he's not, and you didn't hit the rewind button to hear how to contact him, you can always DM us, email me at info@telehelping.com. Our podcast team will ensure that you get connected with Caleb. And Caleb, I just want to say that I appreciate you so much for taking the time this day and giving me this hour together to get to know you and to have this wonderful conversation.
It has been a wonderful conversation, Cody, and thank you for the opportunity. It's been great.
I appreciate it, brother. Be well and have a nice day.
Thank you. Take care.
This video was brought to you by our official sponsor, Telehelping. Need support for your business? Telehelping connects you with top-tier remote staff to help you streamline operations and fuel growth. Go to telehelping.com and get started today.